Right now I'm working on an in-depth video about the era of Steve Jobs' return to Apple in the late 90s, and how those years are arguably the most important in all of Apple's history. But I'm often fascinated by the obscure proto-Apple stuff that never made it to market or was only a crude idea of something improved upon later. Now, Steve Jobs built his reputation by meticulously developing Apple's consumer experience. It was always about how Apple products made you feel over what they could do. And retail was very much a part of Steve's consumer experience philosophy, with this first successfully being realized with the Apple stores in 2001. But back just before Steve's return in December 1996, Apple took their own stab at something imaginative for the retail experience. That idea was Apple Cafes. If you don't know, the reason Steve Jobs was asked to return to Apple in 1996 is because the company was failing, in terms of both brand and sales. Bloated with a long list of non-selling products and shrinking market share, Steve was tasked with finding a spark that would bring back some of the magic he created with the Macintosh in 1984. But with the situation looking grim during this time, Apple wheeled out its own lavish concept to woo customers and desperately claw some of its way back into market relevancy. The woo they came up with was Apple Cafes, first announced in November 1996. Apple Cafes were meant to be new state-of-the-art cyber cafes, piggybacking on the 90s trend that provided people a cozy public setting to log on and explore the early net. The concept was more than just a cafe with the internet though. It would have combined the experiences of the internet with dining, entertainment, and retail into one 15,000 square foot venue. In other words, a conglomerate of too many ideas all at once. The general gist was customers could walk in and grab a booth that would include an Apple computer. From there you could explore the web, order food and drinks, watch movies, play games, make teleconference calls, design web pages, and even book separate exclusive VIP rooms for parties and events. And at the end, like a Cracker Barrel, you could make your way through the Apple retail shop on location to buy something if the experience exceeded your expectations. Looking at these proof of concepts, you immediately get 90s theme restaurant and mall vibes, complete with Apple's 90s performa advertising style. A Planet Hollywood setting with shades of Circuit City that feels like it's doing too much for the only thing it's trying to achieve: sell you Apple stuff. Apple partnered with the real estate company Megabytes International to license the brand, while Landmark Entertainment, a group who specialized in developing theme park attractions like the Jurassic Park ride at Universal Studios, was tasked with developing the concepts. The first location was planned to launch in Los Angeles, followed by locations in New York, Tokyo, Paris, London, and Sydney. The senior VP of marketing at Apple was quoted saying when the project was first announced, "Cyber cafes are in. The technology finally is reaching out to the rest of us. This will be a place to showcase our products in the real world." It's now easy to forget how important physical shelf space once was to sell your products when online shopping was only beginning to gain some traction. I'll admit the concept images are pretty cool with its clean futuristic look, but still this just screams techno rainforest cafe level gimmick. But really what Apple Cafes represent more than anything is how urgently they needed to get Steve Jobs back and how timely his return was just 1 month later. Because on a macro level, what Apple Cafes demonstrated was how unfocused Apple had become as a company, succumbing to a sort of Chuck E. Cheese level attraction to sell their products. Long gone from an era where they boasted themselves as a company trying to revolutionize the world. But believe it or not, after Steve was ushered back in, he didn't immediately kill the project. In fact, some reports say he was on board with the idea before it fell through. Whether he was playing nice with executives until he could gain complete control, or if he realized these sort of gimmicks didn't fall into the scope of focus that led to the revamped 1998 product line, both scenarios probably hold weight. Another report says that the deal might have just simply fell through with Megabytes. But by December 1997, just a little over a year after its announcement, the plan for Apple Cafes was dead in the water. But like many ideas from other people that Steve Jobs casually adopted as his own, Apple Cafes became the seed for his own later concepts. By 1999, the Apple Store was well into development and surely took a few notes from the Apple Cafes blueprint. However, there was another project that actually bridged between Apple Cafes and Apple Stores. After the cafe concept fell through, Steve struck a deal with computer retailer CompUSA to include a designated area in their stores solely for Apple products. an Apple mini store within a store that featured banners from Apple's 1998 Think Different campaign and adopted Steve's meticulous personal touch to give the customer a more personal experience. This became a mildly successful forerunner to the Apple Store, but was already a far simpler and pragmatic cry from the glitzy and over-the-top Apple cafes. An idea that sought to give off the vibe that Apple still maintained a future-forward attitude, but in actuality was sorely lacking the edge they once possessed that was confident enough to dictate what the future would be. Fortunately for the company, Steve Jobs was that missing edge and was primed and ready to catapult Apple again to heights like never before. So what are your thoughts? Do you think Apple cafes would have been a cool thing to have in the 90s? I personally get a lot of Disney Quest vibes from these concepts, which was the failed Michael Eisner attempt to jam the entire Disney World experience into one building. I think they could have entertained us with at least one location so we could have seen these concepts come to life. But with this also being a restaurant, I just see a lot of sticky food hands griming up a bunch of Apple gear. So yeah, tell me down below, like and subscribe for more. I'll see you next time.